Okay.
Oh, perfect.
Okay, good evening, everyone. It's 7 o'clock. I would like to reconvene our 8th Board of Education meeting following the executive session.
Good, thank you.
Please join me in the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the
United States of America
and
and the Republic
for which
of
it
the
stands,
state
one
and
under
under indivisible, liberty
With liberty, and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, so evacuation procedures. Although we're not at the school tonight, we thought it would be a good idea to remind families who are at home so often now to look at their own home evacuation plan, review it with the families, check smoke alarms, and be safe. Now I'm going to turn over for the good of the order to Diana and any other board members who would like to speak at this time. Diana?
Thank you, Cindy. I just wanted to start out with thank yous, and I know there are so many thank yous, and I want my fellow board members to please chime in and add your own thank yous or your acknowledgments from your experience. But I think given the events of these past, I don't know, billion weeks, however long it's been, I have to start by thanking Cindy and Frank. I'm going to just start sort of the direct communication that we've been having from you two has been amazing. I appreciate the collaboration that you've had with our entire community, and you've just built our trust, or my trust as a board member, that this is being handled in the best possible way that it can. So thank both of you. I want to thank our administrators who have been, holding things together and communicating with us and families. With the teachers, there's this, circulating, I don't know if meme is the right word, but message online about Maslow before Bloom, that we have to make sure we meet kids' needs of safety and security before we can worry about higher order learning and thinking. And I feel like from the very start, our teachers have reached out to make sure that kids were safe and that they knew that there would be, they would be okay through all of this. And that has included, personal phone calls and a food drive. And then there was that amazing parade. And so I just think that what our faculty and staff have done to make kids feel safe is just beyond words. And our families who are now hopefully trying to work from home and balance, homeschooling and staying sane, and the grandparents who have stepped up, and all of our community members who are working in the stores and hardware store. And just, the way our community has come together is not at all a surprise, but I am so very grateful for it. And thank you kind of falls short, but I thought I just felt like we needed to just say something to acknowledge how hard everyone has worked and how much heart they've put into making sure that our kids are safe. So thank you all.
Thank you, Diana. Any other board member?
Oh, I was going to add to that list. Gary Kubitz started a community alliance, and Joe Sapienza, other members of the community, Gail Brown, other organizations are all part of that, and they're addressing the various needs of members of the community as we all struggle to navigate what's on. So a big thank you to Gary and to all the rest of the members there who have come together for this alliance in a terrible time. Thank you, Diana, for expressing that so beautifully.
Any other board members?
This is Tim. I would add that I have been so proud of this community in seeing the way that we've come together and looked out for each other. I am seeing people on the streets as I walk around, social distancing, of course, but just doing my walk around the neighborhood, and people are so, I don't know, it just feels like we are all in this together, and people understand that we're all hurting, and they want to do what they can to smile and bring greetings to each other. And it really makes me feel good to live here, because I see that everywhere I go, that people are being very kind to one another in these days. And I think that we all kind of get it. And I'm very happy to hear that. I know there's other parts of this world, this state, where that's not necessarily the case. There are people, I was listening to the state attorney general talking about what she referred to as the bottom feeders who are scamming, and there's all sorts of horrible things that are happening in communities all around the state that are going to end up causing legal problems and medical problems. And I just don't feel we have that here. I think we have a beautiful community and people are really being kind and generous to one another. And I just hope this continues on after we get past this. So all of those people who are working on our behalf, on behalf of the kids in the community, thank you very much. You're doing God's work.
Jim? Anyone else? Okay, well, thank you. Okay, so opportunity for the public to be heard. We did put out an email link for any public comment. We had one comment question regarding synchronous learning at the elementary school. And administration will be following up with this question and with this parent. And that was it for public comment. Please know anytime you do have a question, at this point, email our board clerk, Jessica, and we will definitely keep in touch that way. Now to move on to reports and presentations, we have Mr. Sapienza, and he will be talking about equity of athletics. Joe, thank you.
I just want to say quick, Joe, I am going to present for you. So when you're ready for the next slide, just let me know.
Okay. I'm ready.
All right. I should be presenting.
Okay, so board members, what you are looking at is the current sports offerings broken down by gender and sports season, with the total number of sports in each season and the total number of teams. The first thing I'd like to draw your attention to is the fall season. You notice the fall sports season is very heavy on sports teams. We, on the female side, we have 6 sports for a total of 12 teams. The reason why the fall is so heavy is because our league and most schools, they run the specific sports in the season in which NYSFA, New York State Public High School Athletic Association, sponsors the championships. So, all of those fall sports, the NYSFA championship is in the fall season. So that's why they're there. And I mention that because it's come up in the past. We are very heavy on all sports in the fall season, but especially on the female side. Tennis on the female side was started back up again this school year, after not being run for several years. We're fortunate to bring that program back. So on the female side, there's a total of 6 sports and 12 teams in the fall season, 4 sports, 8 in the fall. And the male side, there's 4 sports and 8 teams. Moving on to the winter, one thing I want to draw your attention to is on the boys' side. In basketball, there's 3 levels, and I'm going to refer back to that later. That's why I draw your attention to that. I did want to mention that we do have, it is common in the sport of hockey and bowling. We have had females participating on both of those teams in the past as mixed competitors. And I also wanted to draw your attention to indoor track. That was a sport that was added two school years ago. That's a relatively new sport here at Voorheesville. I believe it's our 2nd season. And, I should give a plug to our coaches who did a phenomenal job transitioning us to that sport. The challenges of setting up track practices, in a school where, a lot of time it's too cold to go out on your track. They just do a phenomenal job with that. So in the winter, currently we have on the female side, 3 sports for a total of 5 or 6 teams. This year we only ran 2 levels of cheerleading. In years past, we ran 3 levels. On the boys' side, winter, 6 sports, 8 total teams. And then Frank, if you could just go down to the spring.
Yeah, I do want to state that I believe the live stream is not showing the documents. So I will have Jess put these up so people can see them. I apologize. I don't know why the live stream isn't showing it. Just want to let y'all know that.
All right. Thank you. Moving to the spring, last school year, girls lacrosse was a new addition. We started it last school year as modified. This year, we transitioned it to junior varsity. And also another change in girls lacrosse, our league, the Colonial Council, actually added it as a female sport, which is a huge advantage in running a sport if your league supports it and your league runs it. So what we're going to do is follow the same progression that our league uses. Eventually, the JV girls lacrosse is going to evolve into varsity lacrosse, and we will do that as our league transitions to it. And also we'll if the timing is right, if our league adds a second level of girls lacrosse, I would certainly consider bringing that to the board for consideration to grow that sport. So currently in the spring season, there's 3 female sports for a total of 5 teams. There's 4 male sports for a total of 8 teams. Then the current total's 12 total sports for 22 teams. On the female side, 14 total sports, 23 teams on the male side. Now I want to bring Frank, if you could switch the.
I'm going to do that now.
Thank you.
You are welcome. Go.
And then I just have a couple proposed changes for the board to consider. One really isn't a change per se in the sport of golf. Last school year, there was a NISFA rule change, which allowed for a female participating as a mixed competitor on a boys golf team to be able to qualify for the women's state championship in the sport of golf. So really the only change that I'm asking for there is for us as a district just to call it co-ed golf moving forward. We would run it exactly the way we've always run it. Every year we have females on our golf team competing as mixed competitors. The difference is there's a cutoff date during the season where a female would have the opportunity. They have to declare whether they want to participate in the boys sectional or the girls sectional, and they have to declare that by a certain date. So I think that's a rule change that was a long time coming. It's going to help us grow the sport of golf for women in our district. There's essentially no financial impact whatsoever. Maybe a few greens fees if we have females qualifying for sectionals or states, but that's the way that it functions, under the current state of affairs. So I would ask the board to consider that. Then the other thing I would like to ask the board to consider is to eliminate boys freshman basketball. Frank, if we go back to the winter season, you'll see in the sport of basketball, on the boys' side, we run 3 levels. On the girls' side, we run 2 levels. I should also make mention that on the boys' side, the 3rd level is freshman basketball, which other schools in our league no longer run. So running boys freshman basketball, it creates problems in scheduling. It's a challenge to find games that are equitable in competition. We're put in a position, sometimes we've scheduled games against suburban council schools, bigger schools, and the outcome has been lopsided. If we eliminated the sport of boys freshman basketball, we could potentially add boys and girls modified basketball, so we'd have equity between basketball offerings in the winter season. And it would also, because our league runs modified basketball, we'd be following suit with what our league does, which would make those lower level games so much cleaner because they would fit into the league schedule. In other words, the league's going to schedule them in gyms on dates, on days of the week that you don't currently have JV and varsity playing. The way we have to schedule freshmen now, we put them in there in strange spots. We had a game scheduled for 7:00 at night this year in Gloversville. It makes the schedule very complicated, inconsistent. You end up with large gaps in it. And, you know, the other positive about, and reason to consider the financial impact would be minimal. In a modified schedule, you're going to play less total games. I think the modified schedule is 12 or 14 games. In a freshman schedule, you budget to play 20 games. That's the maximum the state allows you to play. So you'd essentially be running a whole other level and only really adding 4 games to your schedule. So the additional cost would be the cost for officials for those games. Modified officials get paid less than freshman officials, so that cuts down on the increase a little more. It's actually the increase in officials would be less than $1,000. I think right around $900 would be the increase. And then the other increase would be 2 additional athletic trips. The way the league sets up the modified schedules, they travel to games together and either play those games back to back or play those games at the same time in 2 separate gyms. So there's not a huge increase in transportation needs either. And that's all that I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Any questions from board members?
I have a lot of questions. I don't know if others do. And I was just first on the mute button. But do you have numbers of, I have a few questions. The first was, do you number of athletes in each of those groups? Or even just a total breakdown between the 12 sports and 22 teams for the female side and the 14 sports and 23 teams on the male?
Do you mean the number of people on each team?
Total number of athletes, I guess, over the 2 groups.
I don't have that right now, but I can certainly get that.
Yeah, that would be helpful because some teams are just by nature smaller and some are larger. And as for the question of changing basketball to a modified basketball team for girls and boys, wouldn't there be a cost of another coach?
There would be the cost of a second coach. A modified coach off the top of my head. I don't have the contract in front of me. Freshman coach makes about $3,000. Modified coaches start at, I believe, $1,403. So it really wouldn't be an increase because the pay is lower because you play less games.
And then, so then the stream would be from modified to JV to varsity if you were to follow through. And
That is correct.
And my other question is, how would this work? Because my understanding is a lot of kids play CYO. Would that change the interaction with CYO? And
I would say this to that question. The modified season is a very condensed season.
it's very what? Pardon?
The modified season is a very condensed season. It's 12 games. It starts later than junior varsity and varsity in the winter. It starts later than CYO, and it ends soon. It ends sooner. So I think the conflict with CYO would be minimal. In 2000, I believe in 2001 was the last year that we ran modified basketball, and we did have a lot of students that did both. And the way I look at it is, I think the students whose top sport or only sport is basketball, I still think they're going to play CYO because they're going to want to play more than a 12-game season.
Yeah.
So I think the two could function pretty well together. I think there would be minimal conflict with CYO, and modified is primarily going to be a 5-day a week, weekday program. Whereas I think the bulk of CYO competitions are Saturdays and Sundays. And I really think the people whose main sport is basketball, I think they would still do both.
Joe, did you mention the grade levels targeted for modified?
The grade levels targeted for modified are 7th and 8th grade. And as a district, we actually offer very few modified sports for our 7th and 8th graders.
Any other questions from board members?
Quick question on golf, Joe.
Yeah.
So is co-ed golf the way it's always done, or do other schools in the area have a separate girls golf team?
Other schools in the area, I believe last year was the first time other schools in the area, in our section, I should say, started having women separate golf teams. It wasn't offered in our section until last school year. The rule change was the impetus to some schools adding it. Some bigger schools are adding it as a separate team with a separate coach. I spoke with our golf coach today, and we anticipate, based on last year, and based on correspondences that we've each gotten from different community people, we're probably looking at 3 or 4 girls that would be interested in golfing this year. So this is a good way to get it off the ground by running it as co-ed. It's a way to do it cost effectively, and then see where it goes from there.
So then if it was something that took off and there was greater interest, it's possible to have a separate team down the road.
Yeah, there are some suburban council schools that started it as a separate school. And for us to be able, for our student athletes to be able to go to state championships, you need to have 5 schools in your section that run some form of that sport. So right now, I forget what the number was of total schools participating in it, but we'd be on the front end of it. If we make a move like this, we'd be one of the first schools to do it.
Cool, thanks.
You're welcome.
Where would they play?
We play our home matches primarily at Orchard Creek, and our away matches we play at the home courses of all the schools in our league. Our students get some opportunities to play at some pretty nice golf courses.
Any other questions? Well, thank you very much, Joe, for your time and for joining us tonight.
Thank you all for your time. Be well.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Joe.
Okay, so next we'll move on to superintendent's report. Frank?
Okay. It's unprecedented times. And I want to first say thank you to all of our staff and our community for the support as we redefine what education is as a group and as a community. Thank you to the board for your continued support of our district and our staff. A special thank you for all essential employees, especially the healthcare workers. We are working from home. They are not. And they're going in, and all of our essential workers are working maybe double shifts or more shifts than they have. And they're with their children when they come home, and they're trying to balance education and their positions at a very stressful time. And I cannot thank them enough for all the work that they're doing. I also want to put out my deepest sympathies to all the people who have lost their lives, their loved ones to COVID. And it's shocking, the day-to-day reports that we receive. And I know that my heart and I know your hearts go out to everyone who's at a loss. So we are at a 2-week increment of the governor. We found out today. I started writing this, and then at 9 o'clock this morning, and then by 11 o'clock, it was completely different. So we were closed until April 15th. Now we are now closed to April 28th. I'm waiting to put out information to the community and to the board until I see an executive order, see exactly what is in the governor's proclamation. Exactly what it is. When we have an understanding of what is stated in that executive order, I will get out more communication to the community. During the closures, we still will be doing instruction. We will be offering deliveries and food deliveries to our community. We are doing that now. We're doing 2 days worth of food within 1 delivery. We're doing lunch and breakfast. Mr. Venzio also has the backpack program going out. If there is any member who is in need, please, they need to reach out to the district and we'll put them on the list. It's definitely important that we want to take care of all of our families. And speaking of taking care of our families and community, Rachel talked about Pastor Cubits. I wanted to mention the Community Alliance Group. It is the First United Methodist Church, the New Scotland Kiwanis, New Scotland Presbyterian Church, St. Matthew's Catholic Church, Voorheesville Central Schools, Voorheesville Public Library, Voorheesville's Teacher Association, and there's more people coming on as it goes. And I put all those people on because I wanted you to realize it is a community event. Everybody is coming together to make sure that their voices are heard and that we can support one another in our community. There is going to be a card going out shortly to the community, and it's going to basically state if you're in need of shopping, prescription pickoff, mail pickup and drop off, access to technology and technology support, connecting with Albany County Social Services, fellowship support, and any other items, to contact the email and contact information that is on the card, and that the organization will help with those processes. So if it's a school issue, we will help, and we will get more outreach for everybody who's involved. Any questions? Okay. So there are many, many unknowns that are coming up out of this. Today, the Board of Regents met, and some of the things that they were discussed about, it was reading, which we've heard, and I'll go over that shortly. Graduation requirements, district accountability, policies on grade promotion, CDOS, CTE, seat requirements, ENL students, special education students. I mean, there was a ton of regulations that were for the COVID and a lot to go through. Guidance from the Board of Regents and NYSED. Hopefully tomorrow we'll be getting a lot of that. And again, that's when we'll start giving out more information, as we know. Yes, they said that readings exams most likely will be canceled. Units of study, there's an exemption for those this year. And that's what stated. Regulation has said, the department proposes to amend commissioner's regulations to provide an exemption to a unit of study requirements where a student is unable to meet such requirements due to schools being closed pursuant to an executive order of the governor and where such students otherwise achieve the learning outcomes of such portion of unit of study completed. So we're waiting on that to be clarified. Within that, it also stated about graduation requirements and units of study. So we're waiting on a lot of information as the week and days go on. I'm sure we'll get more. And when I do, I'll make sure that I put that out to the community, the teachers, and the board. Any questions on any of that? If I'm going too fast, please let me know. Okay. So as we go further with our closures, and I wanted to share a survey that went out. So, and Karen Conroy is on. She can more than happily, more than able to jump in as we go through this. But I'm kind of going to go through the survey quickly, but give you some understanding of what we did. And let me get this up. Can everyone see the survey?
Yes.
So the survey came out on March 30th. We had 357 recipients. We were able to count if there was a household and how many kids were in that household, and we were able to get that data kind of segmented. We did not do a written response, and that was actually, there was a reason for it. If we had 357 written responses, there is a good chance that we would not have been able to get that data the way we wanted to and get an understanding of exactly what we needed. So that's why we didn't offer the written response. We do encourage people, if they have any comments or concerns, please contact your building administration. The more conversations we have, the better it is. But there was a very pivotal reason of why we didn't have the written response. There were 8 parents who responded that they needed devices, and 4 indicated they had no Wi-Fi or spotty Wi-Fi. Currently, we're about 180 Chromebooks that we've delivered out to the community, and I know that that continues to keep going. We asked about mental health and just making sure that people were aware of it. So you can see that. We asked about support video tutorials. About 100 respondents were looking for more support of the technology that teachers are using, providing a walkthrough of Google Classrooms. We're sure as we continue to move forward with Google Classroom that more people will need more help. As I will be honest with you, I've needed help, as have many of us.
Mm-hmm.
We've asked about technology comfort levels, and I will be sharing this with the board, and it will be going out to our staff as well and be posted on our website so people can read this. So if I go quickly, please understand. If you have any questions, I'll go back. So if you're looking at it as a comfortability, most people felt comfortable. It changed as you got older, of course. The younger students, there was a less comfortability with it. And then we filtered for our special education students because we want to make sure that we have an understanding of how our special education students are coping with some of these issues. And it's a little bit different. We've asked what the preferred manner of home instruction was. So asynchronous videos, online assignments, synchronous virtual classes, combo, or print. And as you can see, combo was the '1 favor for the elementary. Having a kindergartner and a 2nd grader, we do a lot of hands-on with our children. The 3-5, again, you start to see that kind of meet in the middle. And then as you go through 6, 8, and 9, 12, you'll see where it's the asynchronous videos, where more people would prefer that in comparison to the synchronous virtual classes.
Frank, may I just add one thing to that?
Absolutely.
I wrote combo on there. The actual question talked about combination of print and online. So I just didn't want to confuse anybody between combination of synchronous, asynchronous. That's not what the question was. It was, I can make that clear before it goes out to everybody.
Okay. So about 20% of the parents in grades 3 through 12 showed a preference for synchronous scheduled classes. So our teachers are working with this to make sure that they have direct instruction on Google Meet. So they're recording their videos and putting them up for parents so they can be able to utilize them. And they can still join at any time, but they may see a benefit from that lesson at another time as well. Karen, is there anything that you want to add with that?
And just that we're just at that point of starting that. I don't believe any of the previous Google Meet virtual classrooms have been recorded yet. I think that's just starting this week.
And I do know that in the elementary school and some of the other schools, the AIS supports in learning, the teachers are doing Google Meet, like a sign up genius, to be able to get parents time for when they can meet with their children as well. I'm going to keep going if that's all right. Looking at flexibility in the child's day of schedule, you can see the blue is very important. Somewhat important was for the orange, and you can see how that is. And then the not important is here. So a lot of people did feel that flexibility in scheduling is extremely important for us. Only 12% of the K2 parents and about 20% of the other grades did not find it to be so. So most people wanted the flexibility of their scheduling. And when it goes into special education, you see here that they want the flexibility. This in regard to assistance. And Karen said this great. As expected, independence grows as students advance into high school. We should be aware that middle school and high school levels, some parental assistance has been needed, and you can see that. And if you have any questions, please let us know, and we'll be more than happy to answer as we go. And if you look at special education, so if you're finding the current amount of assigned work is appropriate for your child, if you look at the elementary K2, you'll see the spikes and changes. In general, most parents have agreed that their students have an appropriate amount of work. The students advance in the secondary building. Parents start to state that, it depends on the classroom and the teacher. So we are going to start having conversations about making sure what that looks like across the board. And as we share this with the teachers and the data with the teachers, I think they'll have an understanding of this as well. But it kind of shows you as you go up, you're seeing where it kind of dependent on a teacher or they feel they have the work. Elementary school, they feel like there's more than enough. And if you look where it says too much work for special education, you will see that in the high school, there is a little bit more of a response in comparison to what we saw before when you filter it through special education. So that makes sure we have to make sure our work is modified and appropriate for our students. Any questions? Karen, am I doing all right?
You're doing a great job. Thank you, Mr. McCree.
All right, that's the end of the survey. Karen, is there anything you want to add that I missed?
I don't think so. The only thing that I found interesting to note in there was a student's response with technology. If you go back a little bit as far as middle school goes, and I'm not sure that this has to do with the digital learning work that we had last year as a classroom and are trying to continue with the enrichment class, but I found it interesting. So if you go down to what your child's comfort level with technology, and you can see that 6 through 8, they're just as high as the high school. You go down a little bit farther where the special ed child's comfort level, and look at that for 6 through 8. Those are students who, 2 out of those 3 years have had that extra digital literacy piece. And those are our students with disabilities. So I've just found that to be very interesting that they needed less assistance with their parents. They had a comfort level of the technology. There may even be another question that 6 through 8 kind of peeks its head out there. And I just thought I know. Yeah, I think it was that independent piece that if you look at the difference between the overall and for if students feel, I think the piece was how much help a parent has to give. And I was interested to see, the independent level therefore was the highest of the 3 responses for grades 6 through 8. The highest response was independence there. And it was in 9 through 12, but if you go to the special ed, I think it might only be for 6 through 8.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah. I just found that interesting. I thought I'd point it out. Thank you.
Good point. Any questions on this data or surveys? Okay. So,
Oh,
yep.
I was just going to say that in my perspective, and it's mine alone, but just that it seemed like for some of the upper level, for the middle school and high school, there was kind of a thought that there was not enough work for some of the kids in the general population. And I wonder if because those kids are so independent, the parents aren't as aware of how much work they actually have, or if they're not getting all of the work done, not checking in, and the parents just don't know. So how much awareness, because we don't get the grades, we don't see the parent portal, so it's not as clear to parents if there is that much work, if the kids are just getting it all done, or if they're not getting it done. So I'm wondering if there's a kind of a communication gap or awareness gap.
Yeah, and if we look at this, I think, Rachel, is going to be one of the issues as we have to look at, because the survey slightly is a little bit different.
Mm-hmm.
Is that there's somewhat degrees on the classroom, is where we start seeing that in grades 6 through 8, 9 through 12.
Yeah.
For that, and maybe that's where that perception or concern is coming from, because not enough work is very limited in comparison to the responses.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I got one more before I go on. I apologize. The next thing that I just want to kind of discuss is the guidelines for parents, and I can be quick on this if you'd like, and if you want any questions, please let Karen and I know. But this is something that went out to staff as well, but it was a staff presentation. And now we're going into this. So Karen's going to help really quick. Is there any specific questions if you had a chance to look at this prior to me starting? Okay. So this is something that we're utilizing across the Capital Region. Anita Murphy and the BOCES teams worked great with us to be able to support this. The assistant superintendents and the deputy assistant superintendent for BOCES work with Karen Conroy and many of our staff and other staff around the area to really work on a regional approach and guidelines to what this instruction looks like. So, the timelines that we're putting in are some of the timelines that are recommended for other school districts. So you're seeing an evenness across the board. So discuss this curriculum. So our instruction provided by teacher, able to be completed independently at home or with minimal support for K2 students. Completed with minimal resources. We don't want people to have to go out and purchase anything. We also want to understand that they might not be able to or might not be able to afford to be able to purchase things. So we want minimal resources for our families and community. We want to make sure that there's equity across the board. And we want it to be meaningful work. We just don't want it to be busy for our students. When we're talking about Ed Law 2D, we do have to make sure that we're taking priority to safeguard our students' private and personal identifiable, information. So, that's how we're always looking at our Ed Law 2D, and we're making sure that everything is in compliance. Karen, do you want to talk about the next slide?
Sure, the time allocations. Again, as Mr. McCree mentioned, we are following the guidelines from BOCES, from the subcommittee that created these grading practices, because we really wanted a regional approach. As you look, you can see there are allocations of 2.5 hours a week for new ELA and math and K2, 2 hours a week each for ELA, math, science, I jumped down. I meant I should go to 3rd to 5th grade, 4 to 5 hours each week of new ELA and math instruction. In 6th through 8th, it's 2 hours a week for all those cores, plus another 2 hours for other subject areas. And then we have 3 hours per week per course for grades 9 through 12. I do want to specify that it is the new learning. We're talking about new ELA and new math. So It's quite possible that there will also be additional supplementary work, pieces like reviewing your math facts, practicing your vocabulary, words that you've learned previously. But the new learning is what we're looking at, really focusing in on, because we're talking about a pared down curriculum that is thinking of the most essential learning standards, and the things that are non-negotiables. What do these students really need to know, that are foundational for that next course? So that's how we really are focusing there. Thank you.
Any questions on this slide?
The 4 to 5 hours, for example, for grades 3 through 5.
Yeah.
Is that 4 to 5 hours of ELA and 4 to 5 hours of math, or is this 2 to?
That's both.
So 4 to 5 hours total of new instruction.
Yeah.
Plus.
Now, there would also be, I know the way they've set it up, they've got time for specials in there, and parents have really wanted that as well. There's additional supplementary work, but that major new learning for ELA and math is a combined. As I said, there could be a teacher provided saying, you might want to spend 15 minutes a night practicing your division facts or something like that. But the actual new stuff is focused on the time that they'd be either watching a video or a Google Meet or learning that new work and starting to practice that new work.
And a lot of times we have spiral back that we do in our classrooms, and our teachers are doing constant review. Yeah. That's not included within this information. So we know that our teachers are still going to offer those review times and built that in like they would their normal classes. That's not what this is about. This is about the new instruction only.
Yeah. Just wanted to make sure that I'm reading it the way it's intended to be read. Thank you.
So Q3 report cards, middle school and high school. So a lot of questions right now are going to be going around. What does it look like for the end of the year with grading? And I'm not going to come out and make a blanket statement regarding grading because we don't know where we're standing right now in New York State. And, we just found out that regents are going to go away, but we don't know what it looks like. So there's a lot of uncertainties, but we as a district, we're looking at all of our contingency plans and seeing what options are out there for us. But we need to make sure that we understand what we have first. So first, we know Q3. Q3 was almost finished for high school and secondary campuses. Elementary school was perfect. It was right in the middle of the trimester. It was already finished. So their report card was already finalized. So anything that was delivered through March 13th, the students will have an opportunity to be able to submit late or missing work because their grades positively impacted by the resubmissions and retake of assessments to ensure report cards serve as a measure of student learning, not the fact that the kid didn't hand it in. So we don't want them to have the zero because they forgot to hand it in. We want to give them the opportunity so we can measure their learning and understanding and have that report card be able to reflect that. That third quarter report card can weigh a lot at this point, considering what the options are, and depending on the length of our school time. So again, we don't have an answer yet, but it's important that we make sure that we have our 3 quarters justified correctly. Grading during the suspension of classes. There is a lot of equity issues that come along with doing at-home learning right now, the way that we're doing them. We cannot guarantee it's the same in every household, the organizational aspects. It's just different. When we come into school, kids are told where to go, when to go there. The classrooms are organized in a special learning environment, and we really do try to make sure that we have equity across the board. We don't have that control while we're outside. So as educators, we have to take that into account. So we want to make sure that we have equitable access across the board, and our students must receive timely feedback on their assignments. Karen, anything you want me to say on this slide?
Nothing else that I can think of that outside of that, what you said. Thank you.
Yep. Our teachers will use varied forms of assessments and assignments, and they'll provide multiple opportunities for students to revise and resubmit, and get remedial supports. You can't do the one and done, hand it in, get a grade and be done with it. We're in a different time. It's a different framework of what we're in now. And we want to make sure that we're giving that feedback to get that kid to mastery learning as they're not here.
And Frank, I just want to mention that, I'm meeting with grade levels, and I had a couple meetings with ELA teachers today. Things are going to look differently than they have in the past. So, if you're used to teaching Hamlet, you might not be able to do that right now, but we're really thinking about what are those most essential learning standards, what are the most important content and skills that the students need to know, and then what other resources can we use that are more approachable and accessible to all students. So teachers are really, even though this just came out at the end of last week, really thinking of these things already. And so many people and teams already had ideas and plans in place and ready to move. I was very, very impressed. I just want to throw that out there.
Karen, you bring up a good point. I want to state that, on Wednesday, we started rolling this out to our staff. And that wasn't all of our staff, because again, Wednesday was our timeline to be coming back to school for the governor. So that's where we had it planned up to. Wednesday, we rolled this out, and now we're on Monday and people are already starting to transition, it's amazing the flexibility and intuitiveness of our staff. And I just want to kind of state that they're moving forward on it. So you'll start seeing a shift throughout the week as we start to refine the craft. So the big change is that we are not doing your grades, the A, B, C's, the 90s, the 100s. It's different. And, we're getting down to the root of education, and as an educator, this kind of actually makes me happy because it's about really understanding, do our students understand the learning? We have our specific standards or things that need to be taught, and do they understand it or do they not? And how do we get them to have that understanding? It's a true form of education in the essence that we want our students to understand without the bias of grades and the pressures of the grade. So this is where we're working, and it also helps with the equity issue because you can't always guarantee it. So this is where we're going with complete or incomplete, or basically it's a pass-fail kind of mentality if you're looking at it. Karen?
Yeah, I agree with you completely. I think it's actually a great opportunity. We can't help but build a culture of grades and worrying about whether we have a 92 or a 96 or a 75 or an 85. And I think this finally gives us people a chance to really think about, have I demonstrated proficiency? Have I demonstrated proficiency to mastery? And you can't just turn something in and think that that's enough to count as complete. It has to demonstrate what the teacher was expecting for that standard. But we're giving lots of opportunities for students to redo and resubmit.
And also it takes a little bit of pressure off the students who are striving for these 95s, 99s, 98s, where it's about making sure that you get the content and not so much that area during a time that's so stressful already. I mean, it's stressful for adults, and children have different coping mechanisms than we do. And we have to take that into account as well. So when we return, and I say when we return back, it will go back to in-person classes and in-person grading as we had traditionally had before. But until that point, this is the same that we will be doing. So standardized assessments, as you know, this slide is a little outdated. So, the 3 assessments, science assessments, they're gone. Now the Regents exams are gone. We're waiting for clarification on checkpoint A exams and those different aspects. Checkpoint B for the foreign language. Like I said, by the end of the week, I think we'll have clarity. Chancellor Rosa said that by tomorrow we'll have an understanding of need and what we need to do as a school district. So tomorrow's a whole new day, and a day is a year at this point. So. Special education, we're working with our students. We're having resource room, virtual support services, related OT, PT, and personal speech we are giving to our students to the best of our ability. And then, we also want to put in here for our parents, supports for them. This is a technology skills professional development that our staff utilize. They can go on here and they get a whole bunch of different technology supports and learning if they want to understand how to use these things in a different manner. And also these are our resources for mental health that we have posted as well. Any questions? I tried to be as quick as possible because I feel like we're being long-winded, but just want to make sure we have everything.
Frank, I have a question.
Yes, Tim.
If there is it's a naive question. Would there be seniors who would, in a typical year, need to pass one or more Regents exams to graduate?
Yes. Yep.
And what happens this year?
That's a great question. That's actually the $1 million question. They have stated that no unit of study is going to be against a student if they couldn't make it due to the exemption. So we're waiting for clarification. So I don't want to say one way or the other what that's going to look like. My gut is telling me that they're going to waive the Regents exam and utilize the course grades and the students' evidence of learning to see if they got the content in order to be able to get course credit to pass. That's what my gut is telling me. So I believe that those Regents will, have that waiver. But until I see that in writing from the commissioner and NICET, I don't want to put anything down as gospel.
Okay.
But yeah,
Any
that is
other questions?
question. All right. And that concludes. Oh,
I just want to respond to Rachel. She had talked about, I know it's a little off of this topic, maybe it blends, about parents not being able to see exactly what's been going on with what's been turned in. I think it'll be a big difference moving forward now that we have this new, grading policy. But also I know that our principals from, I think maybe in the elementary, but I know in middle school and high school have been talking about having teachers invite parents into classroom so that they can observe and they'd be able to see, because most of our teachers use Google Classroom, and they'd be able to find out weekly, daily, or however they wanted to look, to be notified when their child hasn't turned in an assignment. Just want to throw that out there. That may be helpful.
Yeah, thank you, Karen. There's that weekly email that we get, and that's helpful. But I don't want to put more pressure on teachers, because I know teachers have a lot of pressure on them as well. And many of them are parents and teaching at home as well as teaching through their devices. And that's a lot. So thank you for sharing that.
great. All right. Thank you.
Thank you for all your work on that, and we'll move on to budget presentation.
Bye, Karen. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen.
All right.
Thank you.
So Francis and I are going to do the budget presentation. And we're going to get moving here. Okay. So, and here's the budget presentation. I am going to make a recommendation, and I spoke to Cindy about this, is that we do wait on adopting the budget because of everything is changing so quickly. And we do another session at the end of April to make sure that we have an understanding the budget just passed. There's a lot of different uncertainties that are coming up, and we want to make sure that we're making good decisions and sound decisions. So that is going to be one of the suggestions. So as we are going through this, I just want to let you all know that I recommend that at this time. So, Francis? Oh. You got to unmute, Francis.
That it?
Yep.
There you go.
Good. All right. There we go. All right. Hello, everybody.
Hello, Francis.
So like Frank said, there's just a lot of moving parts that are going around. So we're going to go through budget presentation as it sits right now. So we'll kick it off right off with the tax cap. The tax cap right now, we submitted this back in March. This is something that is a compliance to the New York State Comptroller. We went out at 3.139. That's our maximum tax cap. That's going to generate $570,907.79. I want to just, there's some going around about tax cap and the possibility of maybe having to redo a tax cap. So that was one of the primary things, as Frank said, some of the information that was coming back and forth on this. So we're waiting to hear some more guidance on that. We really want to hear it from the comptroller and not other folks, because the comptroller is the one that's going to audit that and tell us if we did something wrong or not. But right now, our tax cap is at the 3.139. We took a look at a couple of scenarios that floated out there, and oddly enough, the tax cap would go up from all things that I can see, it would actually increase. But so right now we're at the 3.139, which I think is going to be sufficient to move forward anyway. I don't think that we're going to need to do any sort of an adjustment with that. So what does that do? So on the next slide, so the tax levy, so each 1%, $181,847. 2%, 3%. So we're going out a little bit above 3%. One of the things that we want to kind of keep in mind with Voorheesville, it's making Voorheesville Central School District so unique, is we have the highest high growth factor in the capital region. We're also one of 2 districts that I know of that actually has in increasing enrollment. So that's in North Colony, and North Colony is growing dramatically, and yet our growth factor is even higher than North Colony's. And North Colony has a lot of commercial properties as well. So we're pushing almost 2%, which is kind of unheard of in upstate New York. So with that, although we're going out at a levy that we're not used to seeing, we have a lot more properties going on the tax rolls. And with that, just so there's an understanding, that $570,000 that we're talking about levying, that's the total amount of money. That's what gets split out amongst all property owners. Okay, so it's just something that we want to just keep in mind. So with our growth and the amount of real estate that's getting onto the tax rolls, you're not going to see as much of an impact on your school taxes when you get them in the mail. Next slide, please, Frank. So our revenues. So we just talked about the tax levy. Okay, so 3.139. That's what we've been using all along since our first draft of the budget. The second is our New York State aid. And that aid kind of gets broken up into a couple of different categories. So the state aid, we got the tax cap, and then we're going to have our foundation aid and expense-based aid, which we talked about at the last presentation. Our total projected amount now with the governor's runs, or with the legislative budget passing, is $6,533,948. Can we go to the next slide, please? So, as we spoke a little bit earlier, the tax cap could potentially change, and a lot of that is focusing on the building aid. The building aid is an expense-based aid. So however much money that you're putting into your capital projects, that's the aid that you're getting back. Our capital project aid ratio has gone up a little bit the last 2 years. So we're actually we're at almost 62%, which isn't a lot. Coming from Schenectady, and Frank coming from Lansingburg, we're used to seeing a lot bigger number there, but it is showing that it is going up a little bit. So we did get a whopping $4,000 more in building aid this year than we did last year. So that's basically tax cap. And then the look backs, if we go to the next slide on the look backs. So the total pie with the foundation aid is almost $3.6 million. We have no increase with that this year. It stayed flat, and then there is a reduction of almost $37,000, which basically would have been our foundation aid increase, and it's going to get kicked back as a federal stimulus money. It's not included because we don't know if we're going to get the entire $37,000, or if, as the governor has said, that he's going to do quarterly look backs and could possibly pull back on some of our aid. So getting into that a little bit, what that looks like, it's a little funny because the state first quarter starts April 1st and goes starts in April 1st, right? And its fiscal year goes April 1 to March 31. School districts go July 1 to June 30. So we're in our fourth quarter and the state's in its first quarter. So if the governor does a pullback in the first quarter, in the state's first fiscal quarter, it would affect this school year that we're currently in. We got all of our money except just under $200,000 of state aid, which is in this foundation aid formula for this year. So that is an area where we would typically be looking at carrying that as an unappropriated fund balance for the following school year. That one that raises a little bit of concern whether we will actually get that aid or not. But that's going to affect this current school year, not next school year. It could carry, as he does his quarterly look backs. But right now, we're not holding our breath because the state's in its first quarter and they are taking in hardly any revenues. The expense-based aid that's on this slide, this is the what you use and you get reimbursed on. We've been told so far that the expense-based aid is going to flow freely. So these aids are our BOCES aids, our building aid, which we talked a little bit about, our transportation aid, and high-cost special education. Grants are not involved in this. So our expense-based aid is a little over $2.9 million. That is, we're confident in using that as a number for our revenues for the state aid. Next slide, please. And if I'm going too fast, please stop me because I can tend to do that. Here's our major categories in spending. So our general support change, as you can see, the change from the previous school year, the school year that we're in right now, is 4.8%. It's up about $122,000. Our instructional side, $12.9 million. It's the change is just under 1%, and it's $177,000. The transportation is a 6.37% increase. The reason why that is we are using the BOCES service now for our transportation supervisor. So that money's going into the transportation side of things, the entire salary. When we had Mike Boyer as our transportation supervisor, he was also transportation supervisor / director of facilities. And so his salary was broken up into the general support, which would be O&M, and transportation. So the difference that you're seeing there is a lot of it has to do with that salary is no longer there and got rolled into transportation, into our BOCES COSER. The nice thing about the BOCES COSER that we have with our transportation supervisor is our BOCES aid ratio is going to be higher than what we would get on that whole salary with if we just had a traditional transportation supervisor that was our employee. You would only get aid on the salary and a portion of a single benefit package. You wouldn't get the whole family package. With the BOCES COSER, it's just a single cost. So the whole cost is broken into BOCES aid, and our BOCES aid is a little bit higher than our trans aid. So we're actually save a little bit of money on that. But that's why that anomaly looks like that right now at the 6.37, because we had to pull about $40,000 or $50,000 into transportation that wasn't there last year.
Francis, I just want to be real quick.
Sure.
Anything when we're talking about doing expense-based aids and going into BOCES COSERs, or anything that we can do to protect and get revenues for 21-22 is going to be extremely important. We know that 2021 is the budget that we're working with, but the decisions that we have to make and talk about now are actually ones that are going to impact us on 21, 22. So if we're doing BOCES or coasters or anything that's going to help us generate aid for 21, 22, when the markets, they're predicting that it's not going to be the best, we can at least have some control over our revenues. And it's something that we always have to keep in mind as we're moving forward.
Mhm.
Sorry. Go ahead, Francis.
Just a little cursor on this last slide. So the debt service. Okay, so the debt service, as you can see, pardon me, it went down 3.6%. So it went down $56,000, almost $57,000. Typically, the way we live our lives in our home, reducing debt is a good thing. There is actually a healthy amount of debt that you want to carry as a school district because if you remember back in January when I did the tax cap calculation for you, you don't want to have too much debt fall off because then they actually punish you for paying all of your bills and then they won't let you raise as much money in your tax cap. So our tax cap is very important to our district. As you can see, we don't get much foundation aid, and this year we're getting no foundation aid. So we need to get this capital project that we're currently into done and our final cost reports submitted this fall so we can start generating aid next year on this current capital project that we're in. Here's kind of just a look at our expenditures. So the big purple pie, 78%, that's all a program. That's going into students. That's your teachers, that's your aides, supplies, equipment, everything on that. That's a good number to be at. Administrative costs aren't just the 7 or 8 administrators that we have. They don't make up all that. It is the secretaries. It is the supplies for that. It is the copy machines, the leases that we have on that. All of that gets rolled into administrative costs in the administrative offices for all departments. So that's all departments in there. And then our capital expense is basically our what we pay for capital projects, what we're paying for operations and facilities. So that's the cost on that. Next slide, please. So here's some budget facts. Our budget to budget from last year to this year is down. We're at 616,000. We were at 686 last year. A lot of that last year, why that number was so big was because of the prescription drug problem that we had, and we had to increase premiums at 35%. We don't have to do that at all this year. We've kind of stabilized. So, it's pretty good when school districts can go budget to budget and they can have a lower number than the previous year. So we're happy with that. Again, our tax levy increase, we're looking at $570,907, which is 3.13%. And our state aid as of April 1st, which was when they passed, is $37,344. So our aid that we got on the emergency small gym ceiling was $37,502. So we actually were getting shorted about $152. So we aren't even at a zero. We're down $152. But that's an anomaly for us to have an emergency 100K project like that. But the nice piece with that is you get the aid generated the following year. So we got our cost reports in, but that's a one-time deal. So we won't see that $37,000 again next year. That's a one-time deal to pay off for that project. So our typical bus proposition. So here, what we've been doing since I've been here and for a decade or so since, or before I got here, we have the multi-year plan. Our buses run 10 to 12 years lifespan. We are planning on purchasing one new 65 passenger bus and two 28 passenger buses for a total of $236,000. We auction off our older buses, and right now our transportation aid for that is about 60%. So we get aid on the bus purchases. And then our next steps would be for you all to adopt the budget and the tax cap. And then right now we're kind of in a holding pattern because we don't know when elections are going to be and when time is to vote. So we're kind of waiting for guidance on that as well from everybody. Does anybody have any questions for me? I know I probably threw a lot at you in a quick period of time.
A quick question, Francis, about the buses. That figure that you showed for the purchase of two buses is before the 60% aid or after the 60% aid?
That's the cost of the buses. So we'll get 60% on that money.
Okay.
Yep.
And then the second one about the auctioning off, do we recoup some, money there, or is it kind of a...
Funny, the real big buses, the 65 passengers and the big ones, you don't get very much for them. I think they pretty much ran their life. You get about $3,000 to $4,000, about all you get for those. Some of the smaller vehicles you do better on because people have uses for them.
Yeah.
The 28 passengers and the Suburbans and things like that, people will buy and they'll pay a pretty decent dollar for. But the big buses, unfortunately, no, you don't get much for them.
I was just curious. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Info.
Any other questions? Thanks for all your work on that, and I'm sure we'll be updated as new information comes in.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Francis.
Thank you.
Okay, so moving on to 4.1, approval of minutes. Can I have a motion to approve the minutes from last meeting?
So moved.
Okay.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you.
I wasn't at the March 9th meeting, so I'm abstaining from that vote on the approval.
Jessica also note that. Thank you, Diana. Okay, so next will be 5.1 Treasurer's Report. If there's no questions, can I have a motion to move that?
I'll move it.
Second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, next will be personnel items. Let me just pull this up and bring it up. And we have several recommendations for tenure. And for those of you who we will be recognizing tonight, we would much more prefer to do this in public and personally and to have you rise and congratulate you. But we also do not want to hold up your well-deserved tenure. So I will do each one separate, and we will congratulate you the next time we see you, hopefully sooner rather than later. Okay, so first we have Jeffrey Valencia, our elementary school principal. May I have a motion?
I'll move it.
Okay, second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, congratulations. Okay, let me move this on. Yay, Jeff. Okay, so next we have a recommendation for tenure for Erin McCaffrey, our art teacher. I have a motion.
Move it.
Second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you, and congratulations to Erin. Next, 5.2.3, 10-year recommendation for John Ashley, teaching assistant. May I have a motion?
I'll move it.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, great. Thank you. And congratulations to John. Okay, 5.2.4, 10-year recommendation for Lydia Gray, elementary teacher. May I have a motion?
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Congratulations to Lydia. 5.2.5, 10-year recommendation for Courtney O'Connor, elementary school, elementary teacher. Can I have a motion, please?
I'll move it.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Congratulations to Courtney. And then 5.2.6, 10-year recommendation for Sarah Parker, elementary teacher. Can I have a motion?
I'll move it.
Second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Aye. Congratulations, Sarah. And then 5.2.7, 10-year recommendation for Emily Wazinski, elementary teacher. May I have a motion?
I'll move that one also.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Congratulations to Emily and congratulations to all of our newly tenured folks. We appreciate all you do. And again, we look forward to congratulating you in person. Okay. I'd like to move group 5.3 CSE recommendations with 5.4 non-resident student admission requests. May I have a motion?
I'll move it.
Okay. Second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
All right. Next, approval for superintendent's contract extension. Frank,
Wait, 5.4.
I missed that. I grouped them.
Did you group them?
Yes, I grouped.
Okay, I didn't hear that, so I still eyed that one as well.
You still are it. Okay.
Okay.
Are we good with that?
There's a little cutting out here.
Sorry.
No.
Okay. 5.5, approval of superintendent's contract extension. Frank, thank you for your dedication to this community and for your great leadership. On behalf of the board, we would like to extend the contract effective in June for an additional year. And may I have a motion to do so by a board member, please?
I'll move it.
Okay.
I'll second it.
Second it. All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Thank you very much, Frank.
Thank you.
Okay.
Congratulations.
Okay. So let's see. 5.6, approval of bid award fresh produce. 5.7, approval of scholarship. And 5.8, agreement with UEB. I'd like to group them. If I can have a motion.
I'll move it.
Okay. Second?
I'll second.
Okay. Any questions? Okay. And all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Right. Now,
Since go ahead. You're probably new. Just a shout out to the Albany Society of Engineers with a thank you for the establishment of that scholarship. Much appreciated.
Really cool.
very much.
Yeah.
Okay.
Great.
So old business is our committees. And none of our committees have met. So we come up with the right way to do so. We are looking at different options and we will let everyone know. We do have board members as president, so be active, and we are looking through the best way to carry on our business in the correct, accurate way that open meeting. So that will be to be continued. We do have one policy that will be a second reading that the policy committee has already reviewed, so that will be a second reading when we get to that under new business. Any comments from board members on that? Okay, we will keep everyone updated. Thank you. Okay, so new business, except 7.1, acceptance of donations. Can I have a motion?
I'll move it.
I'll second it.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And of course, a big thank you for donating. That was very kind. Next we have the Board of Education Policy 5152. And I'm correct, Jeannie, and this is our second meeting, right?
Right.
Any
Mhm.
comments that you'd like, or we're ready to?
Yeah, unless anyone has any questions or concerns.
I think we've all had first reading, so let's take a vote on that. Can I have a motion to approve that?
So moved.
Okay, second?
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Now, dates to remember will be, well, first I should state that board meetings will remain virtual in a sense until further notice. We will follow what the governor recommends and what the school recommends. So until further notice, this will be our venue. And we board appreciate your patience with this. I think it went pretty good tonight. We'll very much appreciate the input you have following a meeting. But I want to really thank everyone for all the hard work on this. So next, okay, so that's the date to remember. Opportunity for the board to be heard before we adjourn.
Cindy, I just wanted to thank you for running this meeting remotely. It's great to see all of you, and hello to everyone out in the community who's here with us virtually. But thank you so much for doing this and making it happen, working with Frank so tirelessly, and for making a path for us to keep going forward. Thank you.
Anyway. Any other board comments? Okay. Well, again, thank you to the community, and a special thanks to all of my fellow board members who have been flexible, creative, kind to each other, and it's, you know, I'm very fortunate to be a part of this board of education. So with that, may I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll move it.
I thought you wanted to hang out for a while. We haven't seen each other in a while. Okay, second?
A second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, well, thank you, everyone, and everyone stay safe and healthy. Have a good night.
You too. Bye.
You too.
Thank you.
Bye.